This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, this is Seriously from BBC Radio 4, and I'm Vanessa Kasule. This podcast brings you an incredible selection of documentaries about everything you could imagine, and some things you couldn't. Here comes something unusual, charming, and seriously fascinating.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's give it a go, shall we?
Every Hamlet stands or falls on his own.
The first time I saw Hamlet was in 2009 at the RSC, and David Tennant was playing the Dane. I thought, what a part. I immediately wanted to play that. That's the dream.
Would the night will come. Till then, sit still, my soul.
It was about the fact that you get to go into the mind of this character and really try and decipher what's going on in the human mind and how we think about things and how we are very good at inaction, some of us, especially thinkers.
Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth o'erwhelm them to men's eyes.
It is the anvil that you get hammered on as an actor.
It's like the birth of character, really. I don't know, something grows up in Hamlet.
I'm Jade Anouka, I'm an actor, and I want to play Hamlet. I'm going to talk to other actors who've played the prince about what makes it so challenging and why it's still seen as a high point of any actor's career. And I've also heard a rumour that there's a secret red book. A copy of the play that's been passed from actor to actor for more than 100 years to the finest Hamlet of the next generation. Even in acting circles, the Red Book is thought to be legend. So, does it exist? Is there something written in it that unlocks the secrets of the play? And how do I get my hands on it?
Scholars and soldiers, give me one poor request.
What is, my lord Rubil?
Never make known what you have seen tonight.
Laurence Olivier himself was rumoured to have once been its keeper.
There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
And Olivier is a good place to start because his 1948 black and white film of Hamlet is a classic. I love Olivier. His Hamlet was brilliant, but it's incomparable to what my Hamlet would be like. I don't know if there have been any queer black female Hamlets, and if there have, not from South East London, and not with my history. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What is Hamlet about, anyway? Well, it's a revenge story. Hamlet is a Danish prince whose father dies while he's away at university. And he returns to find his mother, less than 2 months after his father's death, is about to marry his uncle.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bride and groom.
Then his father's ghost appears and tells him Hamlet's uncle actually murdered him. And he wants Hamlet to take revenge by killing him.
And now I'll do't. And so he goes to heaven, and so am I revenged.
And that's how it all kicks off.
A villain kills my father, and for that I, his sole son, do this same villain send to heaven.
How do you make this part your own when everyone has done it? Sam West played Hamlet in the 2001 RSC production.
It's a part that a lot of people want to play, for very good reasons. Because everybody thinks they're good casting. You know, the wit is going to be the funniest, and the philosopher is going to be the deepest, and the athlete is going to be the best swordsperson. And they're all right, in a way, but they'll all get one or more bits wrong, because as a part, it brings you up against your own physical and emotional limitations really quite quickly, and keeps you there for the whole run. So when people say, did you like playing Hamlet? My usual answer is I liked having played him, but at the time it was really hard.
So Derek Jacobi first played Hamlet as an 18-year-old schoolboy in 1956.
I've still got pictures of the school production with me as the gloomy Dane. It's the personality role. You're not being somebody else. You're being you as Hamlet.
Jacobi has played Hamlet over 400 times, last playing it almost 40 years ago, but it's still fresh in his mind.
It is huge, and I found problems with most of it, I suppose. But it was also, it taught me as an actor how to conserve energies. You have to gauge what comes next, how you're going to get from one stepping stone to the next. Otherwise, you'd exhaust yourself, physically and vocally and mentally. And that teaches you, I think, a great deal about stagecraft. The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
I keep hearing how Hamlet is such an exposing role, that the actor cannot help but flavour their Hamlet with themselves. And my Hamlet would be modern because 150, even 10 years ago, you wouldn't have a Hamlet on stage that looked like me. But in a way, that's why actors are attracted to him, because he seems so modern. And Adrian Lester, who played Hamlet in Peter Brook's production, thinks he always was.
Well, Shakespeare's put a very modern Elizabethan thinker in the middle of what should be a straightforward revenge drama. And because Hamlet is asking the questions of the audience, he's almost in a way stopping the play and going, oh, hold on, wait. Why? He's asking that question. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom. There is a sort of common joke that if Hamlet were Othello and Othello were Hamlet, both plays would be over in 15 minutes. If you went to Hamlet and said, my lord, I think I have seen your wife with Cassio, and blah, blah, Hamlet would go, really? What? Really? I'll ask my wife. No, don't ask her. Just take my wife. No, I'm going to ask her. And then after a bit of investigation, play's over. Or if you'd gone to Othello and said, I am your father's ghost and I was killed by your uncle, the uncle would be dead within 10 minutes. End of play. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me.
Hamlet's dad is this famous warrior, and he appears to his son, who is a famous warrior, and says, Oi, revenge me. And Hamlet, who studied philosophy at Wittenberg, says, what, revenge? It's a bit unchristian. We don't really do that anymore, do we? I've always thought of him as being a bit miscast. It's like doing Gladiator and casting Woody Allen as Russell Crowe.
You can do it in so many ways. You can stress his insightful observations of life, or you can emphasise the beauty of his poetry, or you can show him as a man fighting himself in a mess of contradictory ideas. Where do you even start? Adrian Lester.
As you move toward doing it, you're invited by all books on the Hamlet, and you're invited by people who've seen this production or that production. You're invited to take on board aspects of other people's performances. I remember reading yet another book on Hamlet. I kind of got halfway through and I just stopped and I thought, all right, no more, because some very brilliant scholars and actors will ask questions, but then they will give you their answers. They'll give you their interpretation. This is what it should be. This is what I saw so-and-so do, and it made so much sense to me that therefore that has to be the truth. And actually, no, there is no one truth.
I played Mark Antony in an all-female production of Julius Caesar and Hotspur in Henry IV. I found playing male roles liberating. Suddenly, I felt I could take up more space, vocally, physically, intellectually. I was driving the action of a play, not just responding to it. In the 2019 production at Leeds Playhouse, Tessa Parr's Hamlet was a young woman.
When you have a female Hamlet, you're watching a woman deal with her own violence, which is really rare. Yeah, it's liberating. It liberates the play. Have you eyes? You cannot call it love. For at your age, the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment. When she does come into her mum's bedroom and shows the two pictures. She's got one of her dad and she's got one of her uncle who her mum's just married. And she's saying, you know, like, how can you be having sex with this guy? Because you're too old. There's a difference, like a young woman saying that to like an older version of herself than a young man saying it to his mum when she's an older woman. There's such a difference because you are, as a young woman, you're grappling with like, my mum can't have those urges because I want her to eternally love my dad. And so the ask is different when it's a male saying your sexuality is dead. You're too old. It's like filled with an aggression that is just so like rank. Whereas a man, that wouldn't be said to a king, would it? It wouldn't be said to a man.
It's fascinating hearing from other actors about how they tackled the role. But I'm still hopeful that if I can get my hands on the Red Book, the copy of Hamlet passed from actor to the best Hamlet of the next generation, that it might give me some unique and profound insight. I asked Tessa if she'd come across it.
What is it?
And what about Sam West?
No. What is the Red Book?
No one seems to have heard of it.
Okay, you ready? Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew.
I think there are two basic ways of doing soliloquy, to yourself or to the audience. And paradoxically, we found that talking to the audience is the less untruthful version of what a soliloquy is, because it embraced the artificiality of the situation. I mean, if I go on and go, to me or not to me, somebody in the audience goes, speak up! And you go, why? Because I can't hear you. Well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to myself. Well, talk to yourself in a louder voice so I can hear you. Well, you're not there. But actually you are there, of course. So I might as well talk to you.
I tackled the speeches first. What I did to start with was that I would sit quietly in a room and I would whisper my way through the speeches. But I wouldn't read them for sense. I would just speak every word as if it were speaking like a clock. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself. As I looked at this and I saw all of this too solid flesh, a lot of people have, I realized straight away that it was sullied, it was dirty. Because the act of having something melt, thaw, and become a dew, that's distillation. That's a process of purifying water. So for me, it wasn't solid flesh. It wasn't about I'm too solid, I need to melt and thaw. It was I'm dirty. Oh, that this too sullied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. And as I picked up on that, I thought, Hamlet is aware that something terrible has happened to his bloodline. And in terms of something is rotten in the state of Denmark, in terms of the Elizabethan chain of being, it's God and angels and so on all above. And then you also have the king, queen, and prince and everybody. They come in the chain of being above other people in Denmark. And if they're rotten, it has to be set right. It has to be resolved. Otherwise, Denmark will suffer.
And then, of course, there is the soliloquy. Strangely, it's not directly relevant to the action, and some productions move it to the beginning or the end. You could take it out altogether and it wouldn't affect the plot, but it has to be the most famous speech in the English language, and if you take on Hamlet, you can't avoid it.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them.
To die. To sleep no more. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, to sleep, perchance to dream.
Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil? It must give us pause.
There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin? Who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will?
And makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience doth make cowards of us all.
Yeah, I always thought about how I would do that, and sometimes I think that maybe I wouldn't speak the text at all. I would write it down, put it in a text, an email, something like that. I'm sure that would annoy a lot of people, but it could be quite interesting.
Inevitably, there is recognition. Sometimes that recognition is audible in an audience. Sometimes it is a deeper silence greets it. But it always falls somewhere. That line falls somewhere in a theatre. It's a deeply shared moment, I think.
It's anthologised and put on tea towels because it's about death. You are absolutely not allowed to sit back in your seat at this point and say, "Oh, Marjorie, I'm just going to have a kip. This bit doesn't apply to me." Yes, sir, it does. Because nobody gets out of this alive.
I remember once playing it at the Old Vic, Winston Churchill came to see the play and was sitting in the front row or the second row, and as I started saying it with me, which was a bit throwing.
Once I knelt down in the space and was about to deliver the speech, I would take my pulse, and whatever the beat was of my heart, and it changed night to night, but that was the rhythm that I spoke the first line on. So now, as I'm taking my pulse now, it would be, to be or not to be, that is the question. And just took that beat and said, this is who I am now, in this moment, in front of this audience, here in this space. This is who I am. And I couldn't be more honest than that. It doesn't make the speech somehow greater. It just meant it took the edge off me starting to speak some of the most famous lines in drama written in the English language, because I was thinking about something else.
Life is really, really dreadful. Why don't we end it? Because we're cowards. We don't have the guts. So at the end of the speech, things are absolutely as bad as they can absolutely be. Let's go. And that's it. That is the epitome of Western drama. It's really shit. Let's carry on.
To be or not to be might be a tough ask, but there's a scene that I've always wondered how I would play, which is when Hamlet lays into his girlfriend Ophelia in the most vicious, misogynistic way.
I did love you once.
Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so.
You should not have believed me. I loved you not.
I was the more deceived.
Get thee to a nunnery.
Why wouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? I am myself indifferent, honest.
But yet I could accuse me of such things
I
that
would
it were better my mother had not
such
borne
things, that it were better my mother had not borne me. I am very proud, revengeful, ambitious, with more offences at my beck than I have thoughts to put them in. What should such fellows as I do? Crawling between earth and heaven. We are arrant knaves all. Believe none of us. I think with a scene like this, if you have a gay couple, same-sex relationship, pregnancy is not as available. And so I think by saying that she's going to take away the ability to procreate from Ophelia, it comes with a different weight. It's a really misogynistic piece of text. So part of the battle with this scene is to battle with her own misogyny, as a lot of women have to, as we live in a patriarchal society.
Tessa Parr. I think internalised misogyny is a real thing, and so is internalised homophobia, and both would be at play in this scene if I were to take Hamlet on. We can't shy away from the uglier sides of humanity. We humans show our worst selves, or can show our worst selves to those we love the most, knowing what will hurt them the most. Racist comments said by white actors in old plays we let slide, but put those same words in black actors' mouths and you are forced to confront them differently. And for Adrian Lester, the accessibility of the part for everyone is crucial.
When you've monopolised an emotional through line for so many years, the Caucasian face being the canvas upon which all other characters are painted, and if any other person comes in to play characters, well, they're not as blank really, are they? Because they're already in some way to be judged for something or other. But for me, a play is a classic because although race or gender, sexuality or position in a society or even place, although those things are used as a way in to character, in a classic text, it's purely character that's explored. And for me, that's anybody. As we move on, the emotions expressed in great writing belong to everybody.
The play is so complex in its possibilities that productions of Hamlet around the world claim it for their own.
Hamlet varies hugely in different cultural contexts, different political contexts.
Professor Michael Dobson from the Shakespearean Institute.
One of my favourite, most haunting Hamlets that I've ever seen, I saw 4 years ago in Ukraine, in a theatre in Ivano-Frankivsk, in the cellar of a theatre, a kind of found space, a very Gothic space, where Hamlet wasn't exactly dead. All the characters of the play were laid out as if dead as the audience came in, and were then brought back to life, rather like zombies, to reenact the events of the play yet again, and they would die again in between scenes they weren't in. So Hamlet wasn't sure even whether death was the end, and neither were we. This very famous play that you can't get rid of from one generation to another, everybody in it was undead. It wasn't just that the play was. And even after the last scene, when you'd think all the major characters had finished each other off, Hamlet came back to life, and he wasn't happy that he'd come back to life, and he spoke to be or not to be one more time as a kind of despairing epilogue, really quite longing for death by this time. Now that's a show that has very much changed since then, because that underground cellar has been in use as an air raid shelter. And on some nights, the actors have been performing Hamlet again to entertain the citizens who've been sheltering down there. But now with Hamlet draping himself in a Ukrainian flag to say to be or not to be.
The question for us now is to be or not to be. You all know this Shakespearean question.
You know, that quotation that President Zelensky himself used to say that Ukraine itself is facing the existential question of whether it's going to continue to exist or not. Hamlet's become an emblem for that too.
For 13 days, this question could have been asked, but now I can give you a definitive answer. It's definitely yes to be.
I might have learnt a lot about Hamlet, but I still haven't found the elusive red book. That copy of Hamlet that legend has it is passed from actor to actor, each one deciding who is the best Hamlet of the next generation. It reportedly began with Victorian actor Johnston Forbes-Robinson, who gave it to Henry Ainley, who gave it to Michael Redgrave, who gave it to Laurence Olivier, who gave it to Peter O'Toole, who gave it to, well, at last, Derek Jacobi knows the truth.
I was playing Hamlet at the Old Vic, and we got to the curtain call. Suddenly onto the stage walked Peter O'Toole. And after the enormous applause died down, he presented me with this red book. And, I didn't know what it was all about. None of us did. We kept it safe, and obviously I was looking around for somebody to pass it on to. And it took a while. And I passed it on a film set. I was playing Claudius in Kenneth Branagh's film of Hamlet, and I passed it on to Ken, fully deserving of the red book. And so it goes.
And rumour has it that Kenneth Branagh passed it on in 2017 to Tom Hiddleston. So, when Tom decides to pass it on, I'd be very happy to receive it. I just need to find a director who'd like to tackle a queer, black, female South London Hamlet with me. So, Tom, I'm awaiting your call. I realise playing Hamlet will be exhausting, challenging, invigorating, but I'm still keen to plunge in and find out what it can tell me about acting and about life itself.
Hamlet taught me to go deeper. There are no dark corners of yourself or of the human condition that if you choose to explore, the play will not hold your hand in. It's not possible to say, "Oh, don't go there, that's a bit dark." The play is there before you.
You've got to make sure your tights fit. Absolutely. When you're up there for 3 hours, 8 times a week, you can't really advise Hamlets. They get on with it. They do it. They are it.
There's just questions throughout the whole of the play, which I guess is why people think that they want to tackle it again. Yeah, it's kind of a never-ending ask, that play.
There's no kind of conclusion, really, because if we as human beings had the conclusion, why am I here? Who sent me? Is religion really, 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 really real? Or, all of these questions. If you had the absolute conclusion, it would take the heat out of the search. And so what Hamlet does is he simply does his best. He asks himself the questions and he does his best. I think that's all you can ask of anybody, really.
Sadly, that's all for this episode of Seriously. I'm Vanessa Kasule, and I'll catch you next time. Check back soon for another seriously incredible story.
My name is Jonathan Meyerson, and 2 years ago we produced Nuremberg, a dramatised reconstruction of the trial of the major Nazi war criminals. Their crimes were indisputable, but one mystery remained. How did this group of unremarkable men come to rule all of Germany? Our new podcast, Nazis, The Road to Power, unravels this improbable story in 16 episodes, starring Tom Mothersdale, Derek Jacobi, Alexander Vlahos, Toby Stevens, and Laura Donnelly. It remains a lesson for us all. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.